You have guys like LeBron James and Michael Jordan, the undisputed GOATs of basketball who can do pretty much everything on the court. And then there's also players who are only good at a couple things, which makes them valuable to NBA franchises. But what if there was a player who was terrible at everything? In this video, we're going to try and build the worst NBA player of all time and stay till the end to find out what mentality and work ethic this guy will have. When it comes to three-point shooting, we could be boring and pick one of the millions of centers who can't shoot for their life, but let's make this a little interesting. If we're going to give our guy anyone shooting, I want it to be the man himself, Ben Simmons. Some of you might say this is a hater pick, but he's legit made under 10 threes in his career. If he was a traditional big man like some of the other guys we're going to name in a minute, then that'd be fine. But he was the starting point guard of the 76ers and he just couldn't get them to fall. And you know it's bad when you do make a three and the announcers act like you just won the NBA Finals. I honestly feel a little bad for him because I think it was a mix of not being able to shoot and that his confidence was insanely low. Philly can be a tough place to play, and when you're underperforming, they aren't afraid to let you know. But I'm confident that Simmons' three-pointer is helping us build the worst player ever. I'm also going to give this player Simmons' mid-range shot as well, because if you look at the numbers, his shooting percentage from there is low too. Anything that wasn't a shot in the paint is tough for him, and this is a great start to the video. We're going to do a different player than Ben Simmons for our free throw shooting, and I've brought it down to 4 players: Shaquille O'Neal, DeAndre Jordan, Wilt Chamberlain, and Ben Wallace. Wallace has shot the lowest percent in NBA history, only making 41% of his career free throws, but we're going to rule him out because his form is actually pretty good. And we're also going to rule out Chamberlain because he said he was actually good at free throws in high school, which I don't really believe, but hey, it's something. This now leaves us between Shaq and DeAndre Jordan, and even though he had the highest free throw percentage out of these guys, I'm going to take Shaq. Jordan actually improved his form at one point and shot over 70% from the line in a season, and we've never seen that from Shaq. His form stayed bad throughout his career, and it got to the point where he actually threw it off the backboard and dunked it instead of shooting the free throw. Okay, that was a hilarious all-star moment, but still, this guy could not find the bottom of the basket when it came to free throws. We could honestly pick Shaq for this next category because we all know he took forever to get up and down the court. And since our next attribute is speed, we have to find the slowest NBA player ever to make sure that our player can't get back on defense. Even though Shaq was 400 pounds at one point and he could easily be the choice, let's switch things up a bit and look at some other contenders. Taco Fall is 7'6", 310 pounds, and when you watch him play, you can see why he's a contender for this attribute. I mean, I can't really blame the guy. Being that tall is awful for your knees, and if he ran full speed all of the time, he'd be in shambles forever. Since he played under 40 games in the actual NBA and spent most of his time in the G League, we'll pick someone else, but he's definitely one of the slowest players I've ever seen. And then another guy you're probably thinking of is 3-time MVP Nikola Jokic, because watching him play is so slow. I swear, even when he's making moves to the basket, he moves in slow motion, but somehow he gets it to work. Even though he'd be another good choice, I've honestly seen a couple of hustle plays where he is moving, so I wouldn't say he's the slowest. So at the end of the day, we're gonna go with 8-time All-Star Yao Ming. It seems unfair to pick this guy because much like Taco, Yao was just really big, and that played a huge role in why he was so slow. He was identical to Fall when it came to his build, standing at 7'6" and weighing in at just over 310 pounds. That was a huge reason why his career was only 9 seasons, but he was awesome during those years. And now our player officially has a mix of Ben Simmons and Shaq shooting with Yao Ming's speed. Yikes. There have been some terrible defenders in the NBA, and to make the worst player ever, he definitely has to be awful on that side of the ball, so who can we choose? Before we pick a specific player, I know some of you in the comments are going to talk about James Harden and how he should be the pick. And I'm sorry, that's just wrong. Was Harden a good defender? Probably not, no, but he was average to a little below average, so he won't be the pick for worst defense ever. If you disagree, let me know in the comments because I see a lot of Harden slander online and I think it's unwarranted. Now that my rant is over, let's pick a rotating door on defense. I'm not gonna lie, this pick is probably gonna be a guard because at the end of the day, they're shorter and easier to score on, so don't be mad if we pick your favorite player. And let's take a look at our contenders. Steve Nash, Stephen Curry, Trae Young, and sort of a surprising pick here, Kyle Korver. I'm not gonna take Korver's defense for our player because I really don't think it was terrible, but at the end of the day, that guy was a straight sniper and not much else. Let's eliminate Curry because even though he has struggled on that side of the ball, he's also gotten a ton of steals and I don't think that should go unnoticed. I know steals don't tell the whole story, but if you're causing turnovers, you're doing something on defense. Which leaves us between Steve Nash and Trae Young, and to be honest, I think I'm going to pick Nash's defense to build our worst player ever. Trae Young is shorter than Nash, and I'm not going to lie, I think height is a huge reason why we see Young get exposed on defense at times. Steve Nash was a respectable 6'3", and he still was an awful defender. That's without mentioning the fact that he won 2 MVPs but was still considered one of the worst defenders in the league. So it really makes you think, did he deserve them in the first place? That's a different debate for another video, but giving this guy's Nash defense is definitely helping our case for the worst player ever. A player's defense has a lot to do with their build, which includes their height and weight, so when we go back through NBA history, which player's build would be perfect for this video? Ideally, this player is on the shorter side, which already brings our search down to a couple of players, and let's make this category easy. Muggsy Bogues was 5'3", 136 pounds, and he's the clear choice. Because if you went over to our other video, building the best NBA player ever, and gave him that build, he would still struggle in the league. And he had Curry's shooting with Kobe's mentality. So yeah, I'm gonna go Muggsy Bogues with this pick. It's really hard to make a pick for this next skill, and that's a mix of passing and playmaking. This is really tough to determine because at the end of the day, pretty much everyone in the NBA is a serviceable passer. It's a simple skill to learn, and while it's hard to be elite at it, being an alright passer is pretty achievable in the NBA. We could take a look at a player who has the most turnovers in the season, but in my opinion, that's a bad stat to determine our passing because it's James Harden. Harden is really talented at passing and playmaking, but the reason he has the most turnovers in the season is because during his Houston days, he had the ball in his hand every play. And this is the reason that players like LeBron James and Allen Iverson have a bunch of turnovers because they are the main offensive guy on their team. So instead of using that to determine it, let's have some fun with this pick and pick a player who has a bunch of lowlights passing the ball. And I'm sorry to say it, but we have to go with the Shaqtin' a Fool MVP himself, JaVale McGee. He has some crazy bad passes, and if you look at his stats, he has never averaged over an assist per game in a full regular season. Now don't get me wrong, McGee has been a solid role player during his time in the NBA, but for the meme, we're going to give our player his passing and playmaking. For this next attribute, we're definitely going to have to pick another big man. I'll give you a second to guess what it is. We're going to hand out some handles to the worst NBA player ever, and this has to be a center. No, I'm not talking about a guy like Bol Bol who has the ball on a string somehow. I'm talking about the gritty centers underneath. Centers like DeAndre Jordan and Dwight Howard are guys that we're targeting, but we're actually going to eliminate those two players and bring our debate down to two other guys. Let's start with Rudy Gobert, and I'm sorry, I know he gets enough hate, but let's be honest, he cannot dribble the ball. If he had that ability, I guarantee you he'd be a top 15 player in the league, and no, I'm not kidding. Our other contender and winner of this category is going to be Andre Drummond, which is a pretty self-explanatory answer. The reason I'm picking Drummond over Gobert is because he actually tries to be a point guard during NBA games, and it just doesn't work out. During this play, he puts the ball on the ground and tries finishing at the rim, and I don't even know what that was. My guy Drummond is a really talented rebounder, but I think he should leave the dribbling to someone else. IQ and leadership is important when you build a player, so let's make sure we get one of the worst for our player. Honestly, we could go McGee again, but since that's against the rules, let's try and pick someone else. At first, I was having trouble finding someone, but then I remembered one play from the 2018 finals.
Great job from Smith to get the rebound, but dribble it away.
Yep, I gotta go with J.R. Smith for leadership and IQ because this play was really bad, and by the way LeBron reacted, I think he agrees. Now let's give J.R. his flowers. He was absolutely electric during his time in the NBA, and he was really good for a couple of teams. But he never led a team or was the main star on one, so we're gonna take his IQ and leadership for our guy. Athleticism is huge when it comes to success in the NBA because almost all the top players are freak athletes. Sure, there's the exceptions like Luka Doncic and Jokic who still find success, but a majority of the top guys can make high-flying dunks look easy. And I feel bad because we're probably gonna have to target another big man like Yao and Taco for this because truthfully, they are some of the least athletic players ever. Again, not their fault, but we need to make the worst player ever, so for our choice, we're gonna go with Jared Dudley. I'm joking about Dudley, but honestly, he's not a terrible choice for this category. The athleticism for the worst player in NBA history is gonna be Sean Bradley. He was 7'6", 235 pounds, but still had trouble dunking, and he wasn't great at finishing in the paint. He only shot 50% from the field once in his career, and if you know ball, then you realize that's pretty rough for a center. So you know what, let's also give our player Bradley's finishing. I know that's against the rules, but let's just go with it. Staying healthy was tough for this guy, and with his athleticism, our terrible player just got a lot worse. And of course I said we're gonna tell you this guy's mentality, and remember, we have to pick a guy who had a ton of talent, but didn't execute because his mind wasn't in the game. I know a couple of players are probably coming to your mind, but I'm gonna settle on Latrell Sprewell, because this guy was super talented in the early 90s and 2000s. He was a multiple-time All-Star and was a great scorer, but he had a couple of incidents that really hurt his career, like punching a coach and getting suspended 68 games. With a better mentality and harder work ethic, I bet he would have reached higher and peaked better in the NBA, but sadly that just didn't happen. So our player's mentality isn't that great either. There it is, we have officially created the worst player in NBA history. An unathletic, incapable shooter who stands at 5'3" and has less than a desirable mindset is our player today. And make sure to let us know in the comments who we should have picked for different skills. As always, click on the screen for more basketball content.